Do you remember those Saturday mornings when you nestled yourself on the couch with a bowl of sugary cereal and the television flickered to life with the iconic Hanna-Barbera logo? Let's go back to those times for a while, as we begin this spooky adventure with the lovable, clumsy Great Dane named Scooby-Doo and his gang of mystery-solving pals. It's been more than half a century since then, and Scooby-Doo is still going strong, serving up delightful doses of humour, mystery, and of course, some hair-raising scares. Among those treasure troves of Scooby-Doo episodes, there are some that crank up the spookiness factor to spine-tingling levels. These are the episodes that send shivers down your spine and make you laugh nervously. So gather round, fellow Scooby-Doo aficionados, as we dive into the top 20 spookiest episodes of the Scooby-Doo series. Let's get the mystery machine rolling. Now, before we go into our video, we have a small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you very much. Now let's begin. Scooby-Doo and a Mummy too. Scooby-Doo Where Are You? Season 1, Episode 12, 1969. The gang pays a visit to the Department of Archaeology where they encounter an ancient mummy. Shaggy accidentally places an Egyptian coin in his pocket. Upon returning to the university, they discover that the mummy, named Anka, has come to life and is searching for the coin Shaggy possesses. Anka was once a formidable ruler of ancient Egypt, and Dr. Najib explains that Anka has prophesied a curse. He swore that if he were ever removed from his tomb, he would return to life and transform anyone responsible into stone. This curse seemingly becomes a reality as Anka is relocated to the Department of Archaeology in the United States. In fact, Anka infiltrates the museum and petrifies Professor Najib. Upon their return, the gang find Anka wreaking havoc in the museum, driven by his pursuit of the Egyptian coin mistakenly taken by Shaggy. However, when Scooby-Doo surprisingly emerges from his petrified state unscathed, it leads to a realization that Anka didn't truly turn him into stone, and there must be more to this curse than meets the eye. The gang resolves to capture Anka, which ends in a thrilling pursuit, and yes, on a lawnmower ride to top it all off. Ultimately, Scooby-Doo manages to apprehend Anka by trapping him in a basketball goal. The gang then unmasks Anka to reveal his true identity as Dr. Najib. He sought the Egyptian coin as it held the key to Anka's most treasured possession, a hidden diamond scarab concealed within a hippo statue. A clue for Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo Where Are You? Season 1, Episode 2. The gang visits Rocky Point Beach, where they encounter mysterious glowing footprints that lead out to the sea. But that's not all. They also find a glowing diver who disappears into the ocean. While at the beach, the gang spends their time doing fun activities like cooking hot dogs and dancing, while Scooby goes surfing, where he stumbles upon a mysterious object in the water, which turns out to be the glowing diver. Frightened, he rushes back to the group, but surprisingly enough, the diver vanishes into the sea once again. They later read a news article about disappearing yachts and meet Ebenezer Shark, who blames the ghost of Captain Cutler for the vanishing ships. The gang discovers a diving suit in a hole, but it's not a ghost. In fact, it's Mrs. Cutler practicing witchcraft, who admits to bringing Captain Cutler back from the grave. The gang investigates a little further, finding glowing seaweed and visiting the graveyard of ships. They split up to search the underwater wreck site. Fred, Daphne and Velma discover an old diving suit inside a wrecked yacht, but are locked inside by the ghost of Captain Cutler. Meanwhile, Scooby and Shaggy encounter the ghost, leading to a chase. Scooby finds a room full of scuba tanks and discovers a clue. The gang reunites, following glowing footprints to a hidden cave with missing yachts. In the end, Scooby accidentally foils the ghost by crashing into him with a boat. The ghost is unmasked as Captain Cutler, who faked his death with his wife to steal yachts and sell them while blaming his ghostly persona.
A real graveyard ghoul!
The Gathering Gloom. Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, Episode 7, 2012. Scooby's group attends a cemetery movie night hosted by the mayor, which shows a Vincent van Gogh movie where he turns into a fog ghoul. But as one can expect from a Scooby-Doo episode, a real ghoul interrupts the movie and scares everyone away. The next morning, the gang searches for clues but finds nothing significant. Velma becomes suspicious of a gravedigger, Ivalo, who resembles the ghoul. Instead of questioning Ivalo, the gang investigates a mysterious house owned by the Bjorklunds, a friendly family with lovely daughters who catch the boys' attention. Velma decides to investigate Ivalo on her own, while Daphne keeps an eye on the boys due to her jealousy. Moder Björklund explains her move to raise money for her family. The graveyard ghoul terrorizes the Björklund girls, and Shaggy, Fred and Scooby and Daphne protect them. Velma learns that Ivalo was denied a work permit for being pure evil. Fred suspects Moder Björklund as the ghoul, but Velma believes Ivalo is the culprit. The gang remains unconvinced, and Velma goes off to investigate on her own. Meanwhile, Scooby and Velma are ambushed by the graveyard ghoul in the cemetery, but they manage to escape. They also discover a gas well hidden in the crypt that the ghoul has been using. In the end, they catch the graveyard ghoul, who turns out to be Ivalo. He had been aiming to steal gas to prove himself to his evil family. In fact, the gas company owed the Björklunds money for tapping into the gas field under the cemetery. Moder decided to return to her homeland with her daughters after learning about the money they are owed, but Sheriff Stone releases Ivalo due to diplomatic immunity.
Things I was feeling, things around, there's just not enough love. I tried.
Nowhere to Hide. Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Season 2, Episode 1. In this episode, a mysterious green ghost known as the Ghost of Hyde steals a rare jeweled necklace from the Movart collection of rare jewels and escapes by sneaking into the Mystery Machine, the vehicle of Shaggy, Scooby and the gang. The gang is initially unaware of the ghost's presence. Scooby sees the ghost hiding under a blanket in the van, but the gang doesn't believe him until they all see it and flee. They track the ghost down to an old mansion and end up in a science lab where they meet Dr. Jekyll, who explains his fear of turning into the Ghost of Hyde. The gang splits up to search the mansion. In the attic, Scooby and Shaggy find some spooky items, including a mask and old costumes. They think they see the ghost in a closet, but they realise it's a mirror. Helga, the housekeeper, accuses them of making a mess. The gang later finds clues about Helga's past as an ex-circus star in a newspaper article. Shaggy and Scooby find a book about ghosts and ghouls in the library, and there they encounter the Ghost of Hyde again. They use a fake television act to escape and discover a feather duster in the laundry room, similar to the one that Helga had been using. In Helga's room, they find more clues, including a can of phosphorus paint and a bottle of knockout drops. Shaggy is briefly captured by the Ghost of Hyde, but manages to find another clue in the form of 4 suction cups found in a fruit bowl. Eventually, the Ghost of Hyde is caught and revealed to be Dr. Jekyll, which was not really a surprise, to be honest. But he had been committing jewel robberies and framing Helga by leaving false clues for the gang to find. The real clue was the 4 suction cups that he had been using to scale buildings. Vampire Bats and Scaredy Cats. The Scooby-Doo Dynamut Hour, Season 2, Episode 2. The gang, including Scooby-Dum, visits Great Skull Island to meet Daphne's friend Lisa, who is inheriting her family's hotel. They are greeted with rumours of vampires on the island. Upon arrival, they accidentally drop a coffin being transported for an Undertaker's convention, and inside the coffin they find a bat. After this strange episode, they meet Lisa and her uncle Leon, and later that night, Daphne spots a vampire in her room. The gang investigates and finds a ventilation duct the vampire had used to enter Daphne's room. Shaggy, Scooby and Scooby-Dum crawl inside the duct while the others talk to Lisa. To make matters worse, a mysterious phone call with a high-pitched bell sound leaves Daphne confused. Meanwhile, Shaggy, Scooby and Dum manage to bump into the vampire, who they nickname Gramps the Vamp. They later escape, reuniting with the others, and discover a clue in the form of a dog whistle. Uncle Leon reveals that Lisa's grandfather was a vampire who wanted to turn her into one too. The gang split up to search for clues, but Lisa answers the phone, hears the bell and seemingly turns into a vampire, chasing Shaggy, Scooby and Dum. The group discovers a paper with a message EXO 6 Desmo written on it. They realise Uncle Leon is behind the vampire hoax, and it was he who used a post-hypnotic trigger to control Lisa. The paper was an order for vampire bats from a pet shop. They trap Gramps the Vamp, who is revealed to be Uncle Leon, trying to gain the hotel's inheritance.
Time for that silly dog to wake. You shall not work in this circus.
Bedlam in the Big Top. Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Season 1, Episode 10. Mystery Inc. encounters 2 circus performers named Max the Midget and Samson the Strongman, who were leaving their circus due to a strange occurrence. They visited the circus and met the manager, Mr. Barnstorm, who warns them about a ghost clown haunting the area. Despite the warning, Shaggy, Velma, Daphne and Fred initially leave, but they later return to find Scooby, who had been mistakenly left behind and hypnotized by the ghost clown using a gold coin. Velma Velma and Shaggy find Scooby walking on a high wire in a trance and they rescue him. Meanwhile, Daphne and Fred enter the costume tent where Fred is locked into a trunk by the ghost clown, who later goes on to hypnotize Daphne. The gang manages to save Daphne using an elephant spray before rescuing Fred. They also set up a trap to capture the ghost clown in a cage, but this fails when the clown hypnotizes Shaggy and makes him tame lions. That's quite a bit of hypnosis, to be honest. Anyway, Scooby manages to save Shaggy and they lead the clown into the cage, but the clown mysteriously and rather conveniently vanishes from inside. Fred's frustration triggers Shaggy's memory, revealing that the clown used a gold coin to hypnotize his victims. When the clown ghost tries to hypnotize Shaggy and Scooby once again, they use a mirror to trick the clown into hypnotizing himself and make him behave like a chimp. They capture the chimp clown and unmask him, revealing him to be someone called Harry the Hypnotist, a former circus performer who sought revenge for being imprisoned after he was caught stealing. And as for the disappearing ghost clown in the cage, it was actually a balloon replica inflated with gas, which vanished when it deflated. Spooky Space Kook, Scooby-Doo Where Are You? Season 1 Episode 15, 1969. As our beloved gang, including Scooby and Shaggy, cruise down a rustic country road, they realise they've run out of gas. Now fortunately for them, they manage to find an old farmhouse where they seek refuge and some petrol. However, the elderly farmer and owner of the farmhouse mistakes them for reporters, but the gang quickly clarifies their situation. In response, the farmer shares his own tale, explaining how persistent reporters have been plaguing him with inquiries about a mysterious spacecraft and an alleged alien presence haunting a nearby abandoned airfield. After a refueling pit stop, the group decides to investigate and follow the trail of the mysterious aircraft into the deserted airfield. There they stumble upon a working generator and predictably, Scooby and Shaggy meet the alien ghost. While Fred and the girls search for clues, Fred is trapped by a hook suspended in mid-air. A timely rescue operation is performed in the most Scooby-Doo fashion just before the ghostly figure makes its entrance again. Of course, they all choose to flee instead of fighting. In the mess hall, Shaggy and Scooby's culinary adventure is cut short as the ghost reappears, chasing them away once more. But they wonder why an alien ghost would need chicken and ham. The plot thickens when the gang discovers a jeep that appears to operate automatically, and an army of space-themed ghosts seemingly materializes out of thin air. The critical break in the case comes when Shaggy and Scooby stumble upon an air tower that housed a hidden movie projector and tape recorder. The mystery is ultimately unraveled as the culprit stumbles into a wind tunnel, inadvertently losing his ghostly costume. This malefactor is none other than the old farmer's neighbour, Henry Bascom. Bascom's motivation was financial gain, driven by the possibility of profiting from the land's value once the airfield reopened. He had a meticulous plan, like dipping his costume in phosphorus to create the ghostly luminescence, using an army of stuffed dummies to simulate spectral entities, and playing a sped-up soundtrack over loudspeakers to produce the ghostly alien laughter.
Zoinks! It's him!
The Headless Horseman of Halloween, the Scooby-Doo Show, Season 1, Episode 5, 1976. Mystery Inc. found themselves at Crane Manor, a grand mansion hosting a Halloween party. The festivities were momentarily interrupted by the appearance of the Headless Horseman, but of course he wasn't entirely headless and had a pumpkin for a head instead. The gang, along with Scooby-Dum, is present as guests invited by Mrs. Crane, the mansion's owner, and Scooby-Dum, of course, is Scooby's cousin, in case you didn't know. During the party, Fred, Daphne and Velma go for some apple bobbing, while Shaggy and Scooby and other Scooby hit the buffet table. The three of them then encounter the Headless Horseman outside, and they immediately rush back inside to disclose what they've just seen. Later, Mrs. Crane's niece Beth reveals her ancestral connection to Ichabod Crane, which raises concerns that the Headless Horseman may be haunting her family once again. The Horseman crashes the party, declaring his desire for a head, causing the other guests to flee in fear. The gang splits up to search for clues. Velma, Scooby, and Shaggy struggle to find any leads, but Mrs. Crane is abducted. Soon, a man named Elwood, Beth's cousin, explains that the Horseman is not after Mrs. Crane's head, but rather her necklace. The gang later discovers that the Headless Horseman now possesses Elwood's head. Fortunately for everyone, more clues come to light, including a picture of Elwood with glue on one side, a newspaper clipping about a flying saucer, and missing ignition keys. They also locate the supposed burial site of the Headless Horseman, but Fred and Velma deduce the truth and race to the airport. They apprehend the Headless Horseman, who turns out to be Cousin Elwood, seeking to steal Mrs. Crane's diamond necklace by fabricating the Headless Horseman legend. Shaggy later discovers that Elwood's shoe company was nearing bankruptcy, and that motivated his crime. Ultimately, Mystery Inc. unraveled the scheme, exposing Elwood's elaborate ruse to steal a valuable necklace.
Map, so...
It's the werewolf!
Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Werewolf? Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Season 2, Episode 7. During a moonlit night, the eerie howls of wolves echo in the background as a werewolf looms atop a cliff. Meanwhile, Scooby and the group go on a camping adventure. While Daphne, Velma and Fred are by the campfire roasting hot dog, Shaggy and Scooby struggle while setting up Scooby's tent. Suddenly, they are interrupted by a wolf's howl, which is followed by the sight of two red eyes peering from the forest. After an anxious search, they stumble upon two-legged wolf footprints, which leads them to an old cemetery and an open grave with a tombstone bearing the inscription, "Here lies Silas Long, half man and half wolf." Following the trail of wolf prints, they arrive at an abandoned mill. Inside the mill, the group splits up to investigate. Shaggy and Scooby narrowly evade the lurking werewolf while finding no clues. Meanwhile, Daphne, Velma and Fred discover a map of the area and subsequently the werewolf. A chase ensues, but Shaggy and Scooby are covered in white wool, which of course frightens Fred and the girls into hiding within barrels with protruding rubber tubes. Shaggy and Scooby once again meet the werewolf and give him an inadvertent haircut, but they soon reunite with the rest of the gang. One thing leads to another and the creature is finally caught by Fred. However, things go south when Daphne gets inadvertently caught on a hook and Shaggy and Scooby float down the river in a barrel, which draws the werewolf's attention. The pursuit ends with all three plunging over a waterfall. The gang manages to catch Shaggy and Scooby in a net, but the werewolf becomes ensnared on a rock, calling for help. The gang rescue him and they reveal his true identity as a part of a gang of sheep rustlers. This gang had been using the mill as a secret hideout to smuggle stolen sheep across the river. The werewolf persona was merely a ruse to deter intruders. Their modus operandi involved floating sheep in barrels equipped with air tubes across the river to then sell on at the black market.
I got an idea. Let's get out of here before we step in one.
Escape from Mystery Manor. Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated Season 1 Episode 17. Decades ago on Halloween, a trick-or-treater visited the Darrow mansion and found the Darrow family members. They were all dressed up in Halloween costumes, but the strange part was their fight and argument about a strange gold object in the shape of a slice of pizza. The ground suddenly opens up and the mansion disappears. At K-Ghoul, Velma summarizes the clues and they learn that one Mr. E left Cassidy Williams' diary on Angel Dynamite's doorstep. The diary mentions a search for the old Darrow mansion, which is now part of the Darrow University. The gang explores the university's boiler room and discovers a chimney that led them down to the Darrow mansion. They descend down the chimney but are trapped inside when the fireplace closes up. Shaggy triggers a pit of spikes while trying to leave, and Fred solves various traps in order to free the gang. In a love-themed trap, Fred and Daphne are tied up in a swimming pool. How romantic. But they manage to escape before drowning. On the other hand, Velma and Scooby face a wire maze trap. Velma cuts a wire with eyebrow trimmers to avoid a deadly shower of knives. Scooby carefully dodges the tripwire and frees them by applying pressure to a specific floor tile. The gang reunites in the kitchen where they find a microphone and listening tubes. Here they encounter Danny Darrow, who attacks them but is temporarily trapped behind a cupboard. They also recover a strange piece of treasure. Of course, a chase ensues, which leads them through various traps and eventually back the room they started in. The gang uses Scooby to trick Danny into falling down a laundry chute, and Danny reveals that he has been waiting for them to return since Halloween. The Darrow mansion begins to collapse due to the traps, and Danny is trapped on the other side. He tells them to keep the treasure, and they escape as the mansion sinks. To switch a witch. Scooby-Doo Where Are You? Season 3 Episode 4. It's Halloween in Salem and an old caretaker in a cemetery encounters a glowing witch named Melissa Wilcox, who had been burned at the stake over 200 years ago. He flees to Squire Marley's house, claiming the witch has returned for revenge. Mystery Inc. is on their way to visit their old friend Arlene Wilcox, who has inherited her family's house in Salem. Squire Marley warns them that Arlene has been possessed by the Witch of Salem, but they decide to investigate anywho. Shaggy and Scooby encounters the witch in their room, but she disappears. The gang rushes upstairs to find Shaggy and Scooby, and they also notice a strange corrosive liquid on the floor. They see the witch outside and they chase her into the graveyard, where again she disappears. However, curiously enough, there was a hot piece of wire left behind at the grave. At the Salem Witchcraft Museum, they discover the Wilcox family tree with Arlene's name replaced by Gemini. Shaggy and Scooby go trick-or-treating while the rest investigate. Scooby is mistaken for Melissa Wilcox and taken to the museum. museum. Fred, Daphne and Velma find the Wilcox house empty and meet Arlene in the graveyard. Meanwhile, Shaggy returns after escaping the mob. The gang tries to trap the witch, but as always, Shaggy and Scooby foil the plan. The witch falls into a hole, trapping herself, and it's revealed that the witch is Arlene's twin sister, trying to scare Arlene away to steal her inheritance. Gar Mooney assisted her. Squire Marley apologizes, and the twin sister is taken to jail. Arlene, meanwhile, thanks the gang, especially Shaggy and Scooby, for all their help. Mind Your Business. Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Season 1, Episode 4. While trying to find their way, the gang ends up in an Old West ghost town called Gold City. This is down to Shaggy's navigational mishaps. They check into the guest ranch owned by someone called Big Ben, who is happy to have guests after a long time. Hank, who serves as Ben's assistant, explains that the town is deserted because of the Miner 49er, a ghost prospector who haunts the entire mine. Naturally, Scooby and the team decide to get to the bottom of this. The gang explore Gold City and hear about the ghostly miner. In the saloon, they encounter a piano-playing ghost, which Velma reveals to be just an automatic piano player. They later explore the mine, inside which they meet the miner, who chases them away. They find a room with a tape recorder, microphone, loudspeaker setup that was presumably being used to create the moaning sounds. They also discover jars of crude oil, which Hank had mistaken for chocolate syrup. Figuring that there might be nothing supernatural about the whole ordeal, they set a trap for the miner. Shaggy imitates train noises over the microphone, and Scooby chases the miner using a rail cart with a loudspeaker and a flashlight. It turns out that the miner ghost was Hank, who wanted to scare off guests and take over the land as it sat atop an oil well. The gang explains how Hank had discovered the oil and hid the map. A Halloween Hassle at Dracula's Castle. The new Scooby-Doo Mysteries Season 2, Episode 8. It's Halloween night, where Shaggy, Scooby-Doo, Scrappy-Doo and Daphne visit a costume store, where they unexpectedly meet their friends Fred and Velma, who are already dressed up in costumes. The store is managed by two clerks, Dracula and Igor, who secretly want to invite the gang to their Halloween party. The Halloween party was being held in this extremely spooky castle, where a mysterious guest named Chandra, who is also a sorceress, becomes interested in an amulet that Daphne is wearing. Suddenly, a ghost appears and threatens everyone at the party. Dracula identifies the ghost as Dr. Von Helsing, his longtime adversary, who is trying to force the monsters out of the castle. As events unfold, the gang come to a grim realization that the monsters in attendance at the party were all real, and they are completely surrounded by a group who have what seems to be grim intentions. In the second part of the story, the monsters reveal that they actually need Scooby and his friends' help to get rid of the ghost. The ghost of Von Helsing starts making people disappear, including Shaggy and the two dogs, who find themselves trapped in a dungeon with walls closing in on them. Scooby-Doo discovers a hidden compartment in the wall containing the amulet, known as the Moonstone Medallion, previously worn by Daphne. This medallion has the power to grant wishes, and they use it to escape the dungeon and locate the rest of their gang, but they fail to find Chandra. The ghost reappears with Chandra, who had initially summoned him. Chandra takes possession of the amulet, attaching it to her wand. The gang tries to encourage the monsters to stand up to her, but she proves far too powerful. She attempts to cast a spell on Scooby, but he manages to dodge it, accidentally turning her into a toad. Surprisingly, the ghost is revealed to be Igor, who had grown tired of being constantly ordered around. The other monsters acknowledge his efforts and accept him as a full-fledged monster in bad standing. Inspired by this turn of events, the monsters decide to come out of retirement and embrace their monster personas once again. It's now that the monsters chase Scooby and his friends away, and they make a hasty retreat from the castle. Never Ape an Ape Man. Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Season 1, Episode 7. The Monster Buster gang works as extras on a movie set for a film directed by Daphne's uncle, John Maxwell. Filming is not going well, however, due to reports of a real Ape Man haunting the location. During a scene, the lead actress, Candy Mint, is attacked by the Ape Man, but Scooby saves her. Concerned for their safety, Candy and the stuntman Carl quit the production. Mystery Inc. offers to help Uncle John uncover the truth, and permission is granted with a condition to be careful. The gang starts investigating and finds a half-eaten hamburger at an old mansion, which makes it clear that the Ape Man is not a real gorilla. In the subsequent events, they discover a motionless Ape Man model and a doorway into a library set. The Ape Man disguises himself as Scooby-Doo but is unmasked and he flees. The gang sets a trap, but it fails and Shaggy is caught. They do chase the Ape Man, however, into the basement through a secret cave, and that leads them to the dressing rooms. Shaggy and Scooby there find an old camera in a trailer, and Shaggy takes a photo of the Ape Man without his mask. Using a ramp, they incapacitate the Ape Man, and a photo reveals that Carl, the stuntman, was the Ape Man all along. Daphne's uncle explains that Carl must have been upset about not getting the lead role in the film, so he sabotaged the movie by posing as the Ape Man. He pretended to be locked in a trunk to divert suspicion. Velma credits Shaggy for solving this mystery. High-Rise Hair Raiser, the Scooby-Doo Dynamite Hour, Season 1, Episode 1. In this Scooby-Doo episode, the gang faces a mystery involving a construction site haunted by the spectre of Ebenezer Crab. To earn money for pizza, Shaggy, Scooby and Fred take jobs at the site after reading about safe robberies in the area. They meet the owner, Mr. Doherty, who reveals that workers have quit due to the haunting. Velma and Daphne research Ebenezer Crab, discovering he practiced witchcraft and allegedly returned every 20 years to regain youth. Scooby, Shaggy and Fred reluctantly begin work but encounter the Spectre, who chases them across narrow beams. Velma and Daphne find information on Ebenezer Crab and visit his old house. They meet Nettie Crab, his great-great-great-granddaughter, and find a spell book and a clue before they leave. Back at the construction site, the gang tells Mr. Doherty about their findings and shows him the clue. They learn that Nettie Crab has been dead for decades. Investigating further, they find a receipt for a telescopic lens used to see in the dark. At the optical lens company, they learn its purpose and head back to the site. They connect the construction site to the safe robberies, realizing it's at the center of all the incidents, so they set up a trap at the site, but struggle to catch the Spectre. Shaggy and Scooby accidentally hit the Spectre with cement, however, unmasking him as Jim Rivets, who was posing as Nettie, as well as Red Sparks, who was the Spectre. The duo had been robbing safes by using the telescopic lens to see combinations from afar, and created the Spectre to deter construction. A Scooby-Doo Halloween, What's New Scooby-Doo, Season 2, Episode 6. In this Scooby-Doo special, the gang is invited to spend Halloween in Banning Junction with Velma's Aunt Meg and Uncle Evan. Upon arriving, they learn that the town is celebrating its 100th Halloween anniversary, and the rumours of the return of Hank Banning, a former mayor who put a curse on the town, are circulating. The gang becomes involved in a mystery when a robotic scarecrow creature disrupts the Halloween festivities. They discover that Marcy, Velma's cousin and the town's corn princess, is behind the scarecrow robots because she wants to upstage Halloween, which falls on her birthday. Marcy's plan was to create patterns in the cornfield to simulate Hank Banning's return and scare the townspeople. The gang exposes Marcy's scheme and she is sentenced to community service. Halloween ends on a positive note and they head home, reflecting on the memorable holiday. However, an ominous black cat with red eyes hints at a lingering mystery that leaves the gang puzzled. The No-Faced Zombie Chase Case, the Scooby-Doo Dynamite Hour, Season 1, Episode 8. The gang is dining at a sandwich shop when Scooby witnesses a faceless zombie-like figure in a pink cloak robbing a coin store next door. They report this to the police, but the lieutenant is skeptical. The coin shop owner claims the thief stole the cursed golden galleon. Naturally, Mystery Inc. investigates and they follow the no-faced zombie to the Dilly Dally Dolly Co. They sneak into the factory and discover clues there. While searching, they meet the factory owners, Mr. Dilly and Mr. Dally. However, Velma finds a magazine with missing pages, which was their first clue. The gang is then attacked by the no-face zombie and they escape with the golden galleon. A giant gorilla then pursues them. They call the police, but they are chased around. And to make things worse, Scooby accidentally multiplies himself in a duplication machine. The gang eventually retrieves the magazine to learn which pages are missing. They encounter the gorilla again and crash into the no-face zombie, revealing that it is in fact a robot. The gorilla is unmasked as Mr. Dilly, who programmed the robot to steal the valuable coin. He also dressed up as a gorilla to scare them off and had Mr. Dally and the night watchman locked up. As a reward, Mr. Dally opens the factory cafeteria, but the duplicates of Scooby-Doo eat all the burgers. Make a beeline away from that feline. Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Season 3, Episode 9. The gang pays a visit to Daphne's aunt, Olivia Dervey, in New York. They witness a jewelry store robbery on the way to her apartment. Scooby falls into a sewer and sees a cat-like creature carrying stolen jewelry. Olivia reveals that she's been plagued by nightmares since receiving a cat medallion a few weeks ago. In her dreams, she transforms into a cat creature and commits robberies. Dr. Bell, her doctor, prescribes medication for her. The gang investigates the mysterious package that was sent from a cemetery and links it to the robbery. They uncover a connection between the jewelry store and the cemetery via a trap door. Olivia has another nightmare with wet paw prints in her room, fueling her belief in her transformation. To catch out the cat creature, the gang devise a plan. They eventually capture the creature, only to unmask Dr. Bell as the culprit. He's been using hypnosis with the cat medallion to frame Olivia for the robberies while keeping valuable gems for himself. The gang identifies Dr. Bell based on handwriting similarities between the package and the prescription he gave them. Shaggy, initially missing, is found in a secret room within Olivia's apartment. The Backstage Rage. Scooby-Doo Where Are You? Season 1 Episode 9. Scooby and Shaggy stumble upon a violin case filled with money that falls out of a passing car. While Scooby guards the case, a poodle distracts him and the case is stolen. As the gang gathers together, Scooby explains what's happened. They discover a puppet controller with Pietro's puppets written on it, which suggests that counterfeiters might be involved. The gang heads off to the Strand Theatre where Pietro's puppets is located and pretend that Scooby is auditioning for him, but discover a discarded counterfeit bill that raises suspicions. Later they sneak back into the theatre and find an empty violin case under the stage, realising something is amiss. The gang encounters a phantom who tries to harm them with sandbags and props. They eventually discover that the Viking, pirate and poodle figures are puppets controlled by the phantom. In the secret room under the stage they uncover a counterfeit money operation. During a chase they capture the phantom and he turns out to be Mr. Pietro the puppeteer. He was scaring people away from the theatre to keep his counterfeit operation hidden. Chiller Diller Movie Thriller. The Scooby-Doo Dynamite Hour Season 2 Episode 4. Scooby and the gang, along with Scooby-Dum, visit Scooby-Dee, the actress cousin of Scooby-Doo, on the set of her horror movie remake, Phantom of Dixie, a film that originally starred Milo Booth. After shooting a scene, Scooby-Dee reveals a threatening note, supposedly from Milo Booth's ghost, warning her to quit the film. Scooby-Dee is put under 24-hour surveillance before her train journey back to the West Coast. The gang joins her on the train to investigate the Phantom mystery. On the train, they witness the loading of a coffin. Later, the Phantom of Milo Booth emerges and starts causing havoc. After a confrontation, Scooby-Dee's private car is locked for her safety, and the gang searches for the Phantom. During their search, they find clues suggesting that the Phantom might be using a dog as a decoy. A strange occurrence separates their car from the rest of the train, and they follow the Phantom to Boothville's cemetery. After a daring escape from a mausoleum, the gang discovers that the Phantom is Jim Moss, and that he used a fake Scooby-Dee as part of his scheme. He aimed to make money by substituting Scooby-Dee for his obedient dog in all of the Scooby-Dee films. Marvelous verdict. So I am not saying that the Scooby-Doo villains are as scary as the Xenomorphs or our slashers like Freddy and Jason, but these villains have a certain aura around them that makes them appear otherworldly despite being humans. The sheer ingenious level of intellect these guys possess prove that they can be deadly and vicious. Thankfully, since Scooby-Doo has largely remained a children's cartoon, people do not really die. And this makes me wonder, what would an R-rated Scooby-Doo live-action film look like? You know, something that is as good and violent a detective story as Matt Reeves' The Batman, but with Scooby-Doo and the gang. What's your take on this? And by the way, if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't done so already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.